Hello, my name's Nick. I'm a lecturer on the Primary Education Studies course in Cardiff Met. I've come up with this video just because a number of our students sometimes get confused with what MIT circumstances are, or mitigating circumstances. So in this video I'm going to be talking with Kirsty Palmer, who is the Director of Student Services, who should know a bit about mitigating circumstances. So over to Kirsty. Okay, so we are here with Kirsty Palmer, who's Director of Student Services. We're going to be talking today about mitigating circumstances, explaining what they are and a bit of the behind the process. So just to start, Kirsty, could you tell us maybe a little bit about your job? And it's a very grand title, as you just said.
Yeah, no problem. So I'm Director of Student Services, and at Cardiff Met that means my job covers careers, placements, chaplaincy, money advice, the I-Zone, mental health, disability, learning support, so study skills, that sort of stuff. So it's quite a big remit. So anyone who's had a careers appointment or seen a counsellor or seen a mental health advisor or had a mental health mentoring session, that's all part of my team. So it's big and it's varied, but it's really fun, and the team are really brilliant and really committed to our students, which is obviously exactly what you need in that circumstance. Brilliant.
I was going to start with, so what are mitigating circumstances?
Okay, so grand multi-syllabic title for something that's actually quite straightforward. We really recognise that from time to time things happen in students' lives that are totally unexpected, that knock them off course at times where maybe they need to submit an assignment or they've got exams coming up or whatever it might be. And so mitigating circumstances, or MIT-circs as we more often call it, is the route through which a student can get an extension, can have another attempt, can have more of an opportunity to demonstrate they can do their absolute best. So it's really about those unexpected things. You know, could be a bereavement, could be sudden severe illness, could be an increase in caring responsibilities, but anything that couldn't really be predicted, that you think, oh no, this is really going to impact my ability to do my best. That's what MIT-circs are.
Yeah, definitely. We stress as personal tutors that, you know, some students talk about almost as if they're cheating the system or they shouldn't apply for them. But we say, you know, university is probably quite a small part of their life over the 3 years or years if they're on the masters. And, you know, challenges will arise. You know, it's there to support the students. So it's really important.
That's absolutely right. Yeah. And it's part of a whole wider suite of things that we've got to support students. So you mentioned personal tutors. They're a really brilliant asset. You know, tech dems, supporters, all the academic staff can offer advice and support to students. So can the library staff. You know, make friends with your subject librarian. They're unbelievably helpful, especially if you're struggling with things like referencing or any of the stuff that's really alien, actually, if you've never had to do it before, you haven't had to do it for a long time at university. And obviously we've also got all the student services teams. So if you've got disability, dyslexia, anxiety, autism, any of these things, or a physical health issue or anything like that, we are all here to help. And I think I'm sure you'd agree, Nick, you know, all of us who work at Cardiff Met, we really want our students to shine and do their best. And there's absolutely no shame in asking for a little bit of help. You know, Definitely. When you go out into the workplace, that's exactly what you'll have to do if you don't know how to do something. And actually, you know, with my careers head on, employers really value that. They really want people to stick their hand up and say, sorry, I've lost my way a bit on this. Can you help me find back? Rather than struggle on and maybe produce something that isn't quite right. So absolutely, students should stick their hands up, ask for help. And there'll be loads of people who are there to make sure that they can do their best.
Yeah, definitely. No, it's always confidential, and as well, you know, even if you haven't been diagnosed, but you're maybe thinking about it. I know students I've helped in the past with maybe they were unsure about dyslexia, and you know, we were able to point them in the right direction. So
absolutely, yeah. I mean, you know, we do dyslexia screenings, or if you know, even if you're just feeling a bit wobbly because you're not quite sure. You know, sometimes things emerge at university that haven't emerged before. Yeah. Sometimes it's your first opportunity to talk about it. And I think a really important thing to emphasise is that there's no academic detriment from saying, I need a bit of help. I think sometimes we hear from students that they're worried that, my marks will be affected, or people will think less of me, or they'll think I shouldn't be at university. And that's just not true. It's completely not true. So I'd really, really encourage every student, just to ask the question, even just to reassure yourself that you're okay and you're on track, because everybody struggles a bit from time to time. So there's absolutely no shame in speaking up. Yeah,
I'm nodding away there. Yeah. So we're going back to MIT-CIRCs, MCs, mitigating circumstances. When should they be used then?
So really it's about, as I was describing, those times when big unexpected things come along in a student's life. We do have quite a tight window for mitigating circumstances. So it's 20 days before the deadline or assignment is due and 20 days afterwards. You can only apply within that window. And that's really to make it clear to students that this is about it affecting your ability to submit that assignment. So general things that you're struggling with on an ongoing basis, we ought to have adjustments in place for you if you've got dyslexia, autism, those things we were talking about. You should have already adjustments that help your learning with that. So MIT-CIRCs is where something else happens. So that's when people should use them. You can use them for any assignment. You can apply as many times during the course of the year as you want, although if you are tending to rely on MIT-CIRCs and you're finding that you need that help all the way along, really, I would say go and have a chat with one of your tutors, personal tutor if you can, but any academic member of staff, or if you want to come to student services and talk about it, get some advice on how you raise the subject, I'd really suggest you do that, because you shouldn't need to rely on MIT-CIRCs to be able to get through your studies if everything is going according to plan. But if you're bereaved or relationship breaks down, you have to move out of home, whatever happens, we recognise that those are big things that can happen. And on the MIT-CIRCs guidelines, there are lists of examples of the types of things that come up, but that's not an exhaustive list. So people shouldn't think, if I'm not in that category, I don't qualify. It's always worth going and having a chat with your personal tutor first and raising that, because actually there may be other things we can do to help you as well.
There are a few specific exclusions from MCs. Again, it's not an exhaustive list, but could you maybe provide some examples of that?
Yeah, certainly. So this year, I'm really pleased to say we've now got a formal pregnancy support process for students who become pregnant or are their partners are pregnant. And crucially, you doesn't have to be your pregnant partner doesn't have to be a student at Cardiff Met for this to cover you as well. So it could be that they're working or they're studying elsewhere. And what we've said is once you are going ahead with the pregnancy, that isn't really an unexpected event anymore. And so to ask you to keep applying for MIT-CIRCs is really unfair. So we have a pregnancy support process that you go through with your personal tutor, and what's the due date, where does that fall against assignments or exams or things that might be expected, and you'll have a plan worked out to cover the whole of your pregnancy. Now, obviously, if you have complications or you get ill or anything, then you can fall back on the MIT-CIRCs. But we would really encourage all pregnant students or partners of pregnant students to come forward and say, how can my learning be supported through that? So that's one. Another exception that we have is talented athletes. So if you're competing usually at national or representative level and you're required to do things like training camps, or you're going away regularly for away fixtures or whatever it might be, again, we know that's happening. So that's not really an unexpected event. So we would encourage you to talk to your personal tutor who can put you in touch with the team in Cardiff Met Sport who look after the Talented Athletes programme. And very similar to the pregnancy programme, if someone's going to be away regularly, we can adjust learning, we can look at alternative types of assessment, that type of thing. So you don't need to keep applying for MIT-CIRCs for everything that you're submitting. So it's really about making it easier for the student. And the last one that I would really highlight is, as I sort of mentioned, where a student has got an ongoing health issue or disability or something which is really going to be a lifelong thing for them. We don't really want them using mitigating circumstances to manage those conditions. So, there's loads of reasonable adjustments that we can put in place for people. We can provide, scribes and note takers. We can sort out extra time for exams. We can work with the course so the wellbeing team who do this will negotiate with courses around alternative assessments, flexibility on attendance. A specific example might be, a lot of students we know get very anxious about giving presentations. So quite often a negotiated solution to that is, well, you'll only have to give the presentation perhaps to your tutor and one other person in the first instance, rather than a class of 30 or 40 people. But what we will try and do is work with you so that you can boost your confidence. So eventually maybe you can give that presentation to that bigger group. So there's loads of ways we can support people if they're managing that. They shouldn't feel like they need to rely on MITCircs. But as you said, those aren't the only things that are excluded. So it's always worth having a chat with a personal tutor or with an academic colleague, just to check and find out how we can best help you and who are the best people in the university to make sure that students can really shine and succeed.
So how do students apply then?
Okay, so every student, it's through Moodle. So if you go onto your course pages on Moodle, there should be a link that takes you through to the MITCircs portal. It's a completely electronic process. If you are applying for mitigating circumstances, because that can include things like a non-attempt or a reinstated attempt, you do have to provide evidence for that, third-party evidence. So that can be a doctor's note, it might be death certificate or order of service for a funeral, that sort of a thing, some kind of evidence of a marital or relationship breakdown if that's what the problem is. Now, if you're not sure about what kind of evidence you need to provide, every school has a mitigating circumstances email address, and again, that's available on the MITCircs portal. So by all means, students should feel free, before they put their application in, if they, particularly, excuse me, if they need to check their evidence or want to just ask a question, ask the teams, because the administrators who deal with this are dealing with it all the time. So there's nothing they haven't heard or seen before. They'll be able to advise on what sort of evidence is likely to be accepted by the committee. And then once you've got that, then you can put your submission in and hopefully get your MITCircs where it's needed. Excuse me.
So you need some. So what's the process then? So say you're a student, you've put the application in. What's usually the process that follows that?
Okay, so you put your application in through the portal. You'll get an acknowledgement that it's been received correctly. That will go to your Cardiff Met email account, so it's always worth keeping your eye on that to make sure that that's definitely been submitted right. It will then be reviewed by an administrator who will check that you've got relevant evidence attached and that the evidence that you provided relates to the reason that you have applied for. If that's all okay, they'll pass it on to the next meeting of the Mitigating Circumstances Committee in the school. And the committee will consider your application and they'll make a decision on that. Now, the committees meet pretty frequently, so shouldn't be at all worried that excuse me, shouldn't be at all worried that there's going to be a delay. If you apply in plenty of time, you'll get your confirmation in time for you to be able to either to resubmit or to have an extension or to have a reinstated attempt or whatever it is. Really want to emphasise that the only people who see the information submitted through the MITCircs portal are the people who really need to see it in order to make a decision. So this isn't stuff, so we know this can be really sensitive medical information, personal information. It isn't stuff that's shared around the wider office. It's not like people are going, oh my gosh, so-and-so's had this problem, you'll never guess why this student's applied. That doesn't happen. It's all kept confidential only to the people who need to know it. And even your tutor won't know the reason you've been given MITCircs unless you choose to tell them. They'll just be told that you've been given an extension or that you're going to have a reinstated attempt. So it's literally a really, really small group of people, no more than 3 or 4 people who will see the evidence and know the reasons. So I hope that makes students feel more confident that, again, there's not going to be a kind of ripple out of people either knowing their business or making judgments about them for things that have happened. We keep it really tight.
And then just the final thing, so what are self-certified extensions?
Okay, so this is a really helpful thing for a student. If something smallish happens, right? So maybe you forget to back up your work, right? Maybe you get a bit sick, you get a cold, or you get a bit of a stomach upset, or heaven forbid, you go out on a bit of a big night out and you have a 2-day hangover. I don't recommend or endorse that, but that does happen sometimes. And you suddenly realise that you've got a deadline coming up in the next 5 days and you're not going to make it. You just need an extra few days to be able to get your assignment in. So for any assignment in the next 5 days, you can self-certify for a 10 working day, effectively 2-week extension. You don't have to give a reason for that. You don't have to provide any evidence, but you can only do it twice a year. And the reason we limit it to twice a year is obviously because we want students really to be managing their time effectively and meeting their deadlines and so on and so forth. But again, that's through the same portal on Moodle. So when students go to the Mitigating Circumstances page on Moodle, they'll see the option for either full MITCircs or the self-cert. And if it's just, you think, oh, I just need like 2 or 3 extra days and I'll be able to get this in, and you do that, you self-certify, that'll be processed by the administrators. There's no decision required because it's an automatic thing, and they will go in to turn it into Moodle and extend your deadline by 10 days. So you don't need to do anything then. That will all happen automatically. And when that's all been done, you get a notification back saying this is your new submission date. So it's a really useful tool if there's just something that goes a little bit awry and you just need a few extra days to get something done.
Yeah, and at the same time, it's worth either letting the module leader know or let your personal tutor know, because, common courtesy, and they might be able to help and support you. So
that's
just a quick email.
Right, yeah. And it might be that you think it's quite a small thing that's happened, but actually maybe it's a bit of a bigger thing, and maybe there might be some more support needed. I mean, yeah, absolutely. Personal tutors, module leaders, whoever a student feels comfortable going to, are really brilliant sources of support and advice on this. So absolutely would encourage students to try and take that route if they can. Yeah.
We've talked about a lot of things, but you can obviously get more information. There's more detail on the MITCirc's guidelines, loads more on the site. So this is just a bit of a brief introduction for our students. Any other